For months the White House has denied collusion with Russia. But in court documents released on Monday, new evidence emerged of an ambitious plot by a former Trump foreign policy aide to arrange a meeting with Vladimir Putin on behalf of the future president. The plan featured a mysterious London professor, a female Russian national inaccurately referred to as Putin's niece, and bold promises that the Kremlin was ready to dispense dirt on Hillary Clinton. The most explicit evidence yet of a campaign official's attempts to work with the Kremlin emerged in an indictment brought by Robert Mueller, the special counsel who since May has headed the investigation into Trump-Russia contacts. Quick Guide: a Russian lawyer whose work has focused on ending U.S. sanctions on Russia and who met with Trump representatives Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner and Paul Manafort at Trump Tower in June 2016, read further. Until recently, the Russian ambassador to the U.S., a hub for contacts with Trump representatives including Kushner, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and the president himself, read further. The Kremlin-connected head of Russian state investment bank Vneshekonombank. He met with Kushner during the presidential transition, but no specific policies were discussed, according to Kushner, read further. President of the Center for the National Interest, a Washington think tank, which hosted an April 2016 foreign policy speech by Trump, Sessions and Kushner appear to have met with Kislyak at the event, although both Kushner and Sessions have said any meeting was only in passing and they don't recall what was discussed. Read further. By Tom McCarthy. Thank you for your feedback. It came the same day that Trump's former campaign manager Paul Manafort and advisor Rick Gates were indicted for conspiracy, money laundering and other charges, and gave themselves up to the FBI. Up until now, George Papadopoulos, a Greek-American who served as a foreign policy advisor to the Trump campaign and once lived in London, has played a minor role in the scandal. But on Monday, he emerged as the first person to agree to cooperate with the Mueller inquiry under the terms of a plea agreement. He also admitted to lying to investigators at the FBI. The 14-page statement of offense unsealed on Monday sets out how in the spring and summer of 2016, Papadopoulos sought tirelessly to forge ties to Kremlin officials, then misled the FBI, and tried to cover up what he had done. According to the indictment, the FBI questioned Papadopoulos on the 27th of January 2017, a week after Trump was inaugurated. In that interview, Papadopoulos lied, or, as the FBI put it, made material false statements and material omissions. In particular, he tried to dupe federal agents about the extensive nature of his contacts with Kremlin officials, and when he first learned that the Russians hacked Hillary Clinton's emails. Papadopoulos joined Trump's campaign early in March 2016. Days later he spoke to an unnamed Trump supervisor who spelled out the campaign's principal foreign policy objective and improved U.S. relationship with Russia. A week later Papadopoulos flew to Rome where he bumped into a London-based professor of diplomacy from a Mediterranean country. The professor, identified by the Washington Post as Joseph Mifsud, claimed to have substantial connections with Russian government officials. Mifsud is reportedly based at an institute called the London Academy of Diplomacy. He is a Maltese former Foreign Office diplomat, reports say. Interviewed by the Washington Post in August, he said he was not connected to the Russian government. Papadopoulos, it appeared, saw an opportunity to impress his campaign bosses. According to the FBI, the professor was initially uninterested in developing ties, until Papadopoulos revealed his Trump connection. After that he became very keen indeed. On the 24th of March there was a follow-up meeting in London. The professor brought a Russian female national along with him, who Papadopoulos described in an email afterwards as Putin's niece. Putin does not have a niece. Paul Manafort's attorney calls charges ridiculous. Video: Papadopoulos told the FBI that his exchanges with this woman were pleasantly innocuous, and amounted to little more than "Hi, how are you?" But this was another fib. In the meantime, he had emailed the Trump campaign supervisor to say he was working on setting up a high-level meeting between us and the Russian leadership. The campaign supervisor replied, "Great work." Then on the 31st of March, Papadopoulos took part in a meeting in Washington with Trump, the Republican frontrunner, and his national security team. He was pictured seated 4 chairs away from the candidate. Papadopoulos made an interesting pitch. According to the FBI, he told those seated around the table he could broker a groundbreaking meeting between Putin and Trump. Back in London, Papadopoulos worked with his new friends to make this happen. He sent emails to the Russian woman, who replied in enthusiastic terms, and to the professor, who told him that he was traveling imminently to Moscow. On the 18th of April, the professor emailed from Moscow introducing Papadopoulos to an influential individual with links to Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This individual appears to be Ivan Timofeyev, a Russian official first identified by the Washington Post in August. Timofeyev works for the Moscow-based Russian International Affairs Council. He also leads a program at the Vladimir Discussion Club, a government organization that invites Western academics for an annual audience with Putin. Timofeyev declined to comment. He has said of Papadopoulos that George didn't understand the Russian internal political landscape well. On his return to the UK, the professor brought intriguing news. In late April, over breakfast in a London hotel, he told Papadopoulos that Russia had got dirt on Clinton. The Russians have dirt on her. They have thousands of emails. After this bombshell, Papadopoulos continued to communicate with the Trump campaign and his Russian government interlocutors. The indictment against George Papadopoulos reveals evidence of an ambitious plot to arrange a meeting with Putin on behalf of Trump. Photograph Kirill Kudryavtsev. At this point, the Democrats had no idea they had been hacked. They discovered their servers had been breached a few weeks later. Meanwhile, according to non-FI sources, the British eavesdropping agency GCHQ was passing information to the CIA, setting out secret meetings between Trump officials and Russian intelligence operatives. The hacking scandal was not made public until June, 2 months after Trump's aide had learned of it in London. According to the FBI, Papadopoulos was upbeat during this period. He told Trump's senior policy advisor he had received some interesting messages coming in from Moscow and passed on that Russia was interested in hosting Mr. Trump. He thanked the professor for his critical help in setting up a possible meeting, and added it's history-making if it happens. Papadopoulos was making history, but for all the wrong reasons. Across May, June and August there were further emails and updates, plus messages relayed to the Trump campaign with the unambiguous subject line "Request from Russia to meet Mr. Trump." Papadopoulos even offered to fly to Moscow himself, if the candidate couldn't make it. Despite his efforts, the trip never happened. It is not clear whether it is possible for U.S. presidents to pardon themselves. The Constitution does not explicitly prohibit self-pardons, but it has never been done before. The nearest precedent is supplied by Richard Nixon, who sought advice on the question as he faced the prospect of impeachment for obstruction of justice and abuse of power following the Watergate scandal in the early 1970s. Nixon's personal lawyer advised him that he could pardon himself, but the Justice Department said he could not, according to Brian Seacalt, a law professor at Michigan State University whose recent book, Constitutional Cliffhangers, devotes a chapter to the issue. Nixon resigned and was eventually pardoned by his successor, President Gerald Ford. It really is uncharted territory, Calt said. Anyone who's certain is wrong. Thank you for your feedback. Few of these details were known until Mueller's indictment was unsealed on Monday. In January 2017, agents interviewed Papadopoulos in Chicago, Illinois, after warning him that lying would be a federal offense. He did so anyway, downplaying his contacts, scuffing the timeline and hiding the extensive nature of the email trail. On the 16th of February, the FBI interviewed him again. The following day, Papadopoulos changed his cell phone number and deleted his Facebook account, which he had had since 2005, in an apparent attempt to bury his exchanges with the professor and the foreign affairs-connected individual. Papadopoulos was arrested without publicity or fuss at Dulles International Airport in July. Later he pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI and is described as a proactive cooperator. On Monday, the White House spokeswoman, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, dismissed the revelations of the plea agreement, describing Papadopoulos as a volunteer on the campaign. But there can be little doubt that the story is deeply problematic for the president. The Mueller investigation is ongoing and more revelations are likely. Trump's agony may only just be beginning.